Thanks for staying with us. Gauteng Premier David Makhura is wagering his job to prove he's innocent of corruption. Makhura has been implicated in allegations to do with the illegal awarding of Covid-19 personal protective equipment tenders last year. He says he's willing to go before the ANC's Integrity Committee to clear his name. Let's bring in broadcaster and political analyst Lukhona Mnguni, who's joining us by Skype from Centurion tonight. Very good evening, Lukhona. Good to have you on. So, David Makhura's office today, in issuing a statement, and he did the same on Friday, brings the issue down to two factors, right? An issue with the phrasing in the special tribunal report, as well as a political ploy against him. Having heard these two explanations, do you think he's done enough to kill the story or the allegations, as it were?
No, Thembekile, he has not, and I will tell you why. The biggest issue is not whether Makhura is corrupt or not. I think while that might be an important question to answer, it is not the primary question at this point. The primary question is, what did he do as the Premier of Gauteng to ensure that there are enough checks and balances in place across all departments of government of Gauteng, and of course in his office as the Premier of Gauteng? And did he exercise enough oversight? Now, this is a phrase that keeps coming back now, whether you are looking at the charges faced by the ANC's SG, Ace Makashule, or what led to the departure of Dr. Bandile Masuku as the MEC for Health in Gauteng. It's a question of oversight. Could he have foreseen that in the absence of acting vigilantly, that some of these issues could have come to light? And I think there is an important case for him to answer there. And because they've already acted against Dr. Bandile Masuku, they have now developed an expectation from the public, not to check whether they are corrupt or not. Nobody has said Bandile Masuku is corrupt. There is no institution of law enforcement that has said Bandile Masuku is corrupt. There has been pronouncements on whether he has exercised his executive authority in a due manner, and that's partly why he's challenging that report in the High Court. So what we are questioning here, I think, primarily, is whether or not David Makhura and his government could have done better. The same question faced by his MEC now at the Department of Education, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, who then says, no, he's going to investigate, and anybody who has been involved in impropriety is going to be held to account. But how would he exonerate himself so easily, as though he does not have powers and oversight duties in that particular department?
And just on these two threads, one of the issue of a legal special tribunal judgment, right, as well as what you're raising now, in fact, three issues, what you're raising about the oversight duty, the responsibilities of the Premier and the MEC as well, and the issue of a political plot, which they believe is now underway against Makhura. At least he's spoken to that effect. It is still possible that all three can be true, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, Thembekile, but politicians must accept that we are awake and we are watching them. So they can't pretend like when they previously pronounced we were asleep and have either develop some level of amnesia or ignorance to what they have been saying. When some people charged that the move against Dr. Bandile Masuku was politically motivated, they were quick to denounce that, to say that anybody will be subjected to a similar process. Remember, Thembekile, David Makhura sort of asks Bandile Masuku to step aside as MEC and says, I will not feel his position until I have received part 2 of the report. The part 2 that he calls, the report that he calls part 2, in fact, when I was in conversation with the head of the SIU, Advocate Libya, he said to me, well, there's no part 2 or part 1. We had a duty to investigate issues around constitutional mandate of executive authorities, oversight abilities using the PFMA, and we closed that report, and we found what we found against the MEC for Health. Now we are on another report which is about much deeper questions around corruption, whether supply chain processes were undermined, and so on. Now, that is an important distinction, Thembekile. And then Makhura went to the PEC of the ANC. The PEC of the ANC said, no, fill the position of Dr. Bandile Masuku without waiting for part 2 of the SIU report. And then Makhura went on. There were politics there. Of course, these are politicians and they operate within a politicized environment and a highly factionalized environment in their own political parties too. But I don't think they must now suddenly claim political attacks when they are now facing the music, when they denied that when it was raised as a defense against Dr. Bandile Masuku. So the biggest question here is how consistently can we deal with these issues? And my charge is that Premier David Makhura is caught up and is quite entangled in the politics of the ANC, but also he might have committed wrongdoing insofar as oversight is concerned, but suddenly he believes it's not enough a charge to warrant his departure from office. The only thing that would be enough is if he were proven to be corrupt. That's not the primary question here for me, I wish to suggest.
And something else that I'd like to get your sense on, Lukhona, is the argument that, in fact, what's happening to the Gauteng government, be it the allegations against the Premier and what we're seeing with the education department in the province, is finally people waking up to the reality that even with all the good PR that sort of put Gauteng above the other provinces as far as political and governance turmoil, this is finally an unmasking, if you will, that it really is no different when you take away the good public relations.
Well, of course, in some cases, politically, PR is deployed to buy yourself immunity in the future when you stray and have been discovered. So you then, have more people talking in your favor, saying, well, we know this MEC, we know this Premier, they conduct themselves well, they are the most hardworking, so let's give them a chance. It surely can't be that at the first instance of doing away with them, we act on allegations. So there's greater elasticity with which people are willing to accommodate you with because of that good PR, and you've bought yourself that immunity with the future. But I think we would be too hopeful at this moment to believe that the widespread rot and really embeddedness of not just corruption, I think the absence of values and of ethics within the leadership of the ANC at various spheres, that Gauteng would be immune to it. Maybe they were more sophisticated at how they went about with their misdemeanor insofar as their conduct over state resources is concerned. So Thembekile, absolutely correct to say the PR is important. But some people, when you talk to them, they say, well, the PR is not backed by substance even, because if we were to tell the truth, what substantive changes have we seen that have altered the landscape of development in the Gauteng province? And we can't really account categorically and say these are substantive changes we have seen, at least in the last 2 years, because the first substantive change, if you remember, when Premier David Makhura came in office and he was launching e-governance and e-government, he was doing that to say he'll need a more transparent government, more accountable government, and a government without possibilities for corruption and for thieving from state resources. The opposite is happening under his watch. So it's clear that his vision for government has failed. And the biggest question is, should he fall on his sword or not? And if not, why shouldn't he?
Lukhona Mnguni, broadcaster and political analyst, thank you so much for speaking to us as always.